The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Passingham, host of Garden Connections. I hope you'll stay with us for today's show. It's going to be a great one. We are in a garden in Austin, Minnesota, and we're going to meet Liz Bankus and learn a little bit kind of about her year of renewal in the garden. It's a great story. We'll also be visiting with Mary Bell, who is going to show us how to dry anything. It's really a fascinating visit. Then we'll get a recipe from Chef Larson. This time it's Lilac Poached Chicken. It's going to be a great show. Garden Connections is coming up next. We're here in the garden of Liz Bankus, and we are going to learn about a beautiful story of renewal. Liz, thank you so much for inviting us out to your garden.
Well, thank you for coming.
So I understand you have been a gardener for a long time.
Yeah, it goes back to when I was a kid, digging in the dirt with my dad. So,
all right. So your dad had the green thumb.
Absolutely. That's where I got my love of gardening from, is my dad.
Great. Did you help out in the garden, or did he teach you?
He taught me the difference between weeds and flowers.
Okay.
And I remember doing that when I was pretty small. So I've just always loved it. So it's nice to be able to plant something and then watch it.
And watch it grow. That's for sure.
Yep.
So how long have you been gardening out here?
Well, we've been here 16 years, so It's been quite a while.
All right.
So
and you were kind of on the outskirts, so you've seen a lot of change in the neighborhood, and your garden has developed as a result?
I think that as things grow around you, things evolve. Your garden evolves. Things die out, things come back, you replant, you know, that's kind of how it's been for me. So.
And I love some of the structures you showed me earlier came from, as your community developed, you know, they built a road and you got this lovely rock to stick in your garden as well.
Right.
So that's really neat. So tell us, you had kind of an interesting year last year. You loved to garden, but weren't able to do so as much last year. Tell us what happened.
I was diagnosed, came down actually early spring. I was diagnosed with a disease called Wagner's disease, which can affect everything. It affected my right arm, which I'm right-handed. It's an autoimmune vasculitis, so it affects your immune system and your vessels. So medicine that I'm on, for an example, I can't be in the sun this year, so I'm kind of a shadow
shadow gardener.
Right. So I work where I'm, weeding and things in the shade. So I can't be in the sun for very long. I have to wear long sleeves to protect my body, and a hat and things like that. So my doctor said, as long as it's not windy, I can dig in the dirt with gloves, but I would have to wear a mask if it's windy and I'm digging in the dirt.
Okay.
So being able to be back in the dirt, even using just my right hand and my left hand, and using my right hand when I can, it's been a godsend. So that's really important, because that gardening is really good for the soul.
Isn't that true?
And it is.
Isn't that true?
It is. So it's helped me as far as coming back.
Yep. So this has been a year of recovery and renewal for yourself personally and in the garden.
Yep.
That's great.
Yep.
Well, you're going to show us around the garden a little bit here, but in the meantime, we're going to take a quick check-in with Mary Bell. She is going to show us how to dry just about everything. Let's check it out. We're coming into the time of year in your garden where you're getting more and more produce, and if you've ever wondered what to do with the excess, if you haven't been able to eat it all, we're going to give you some ideas today. And our special guest is Mary Bell. She is an author and an expert on drying your food. Welcome to the program,
Thank you for having me here.
Thanks for being here. So I think one of the first things we should start with is talking about the key piece of equipment that you need for drying food. Tell us a little bit about this tower that you have here on the table.
This is a food dehydrator, and a food dehydrator is a series of trays where you put the various size pieces of food. This is a tray. This dehydrator is 8 trays on it. How a dehydrator works is that you want to create an environment of dry circulating air. So you heat up the air, that dries it out, and then a fan circulates the dry air. It sends the dry air across the food surfaces, taking the water out.
Okay.
Now the really important thing about a food dehydrator is that you want to have a food dehydrator where you have a temperature control.
Okay, which this one does.
This one has a temperature control, and the reason for that is that different categories of food dry best at different temperatures. They're not all the same.
Okay.
You know, if you want to dry herbs, you want to dry them at a low temperature. If you dry them at a high temperature, what you'd get is dark herbs that really don't have any flavor. It's too high.
Okay.
Fruits and vegetables, you want to dry at 130, 140 degrees. And then if you want to make jerky, dried meat, you want to dry that at a minimum temperature of 145 degrees.
Okay.
So a dehydrator that has a temperature control, and usually the better the quality of the dehydrator, or the more it costs,
Right.
the better the quality
The better the
of
results on the other end.
of the thermostat.
All right. So a good piece of equipment, well, give us a ballpark of price. What should people expect to pay for
$100, $200.
that? Okay. All right. So a pretty significant investment.
Yes, but they should last a very long time, and
Okay.
you can save a lot of money.
Great, you're going to
with
show
a food
us
dehydrator.
all the
I
good
am.
things we could do. When I think dried, immediately it comes to mind herbs. That's a great way to keep them for the winter. So show me some of the herbs that you brought today, and give us a sense of
Okay.
when you're cutting the herbs from your garden, what do you need to do as you're, as a prep to get them into the dehydrator?
It's pretty simple. This is parsley from our garden. To dry this parsley, I simply take it off, I pinch it off of the stem and then put it on the drying tray. I don't want to dry that stem. That would take too long to get the water out of that, and it's unnecessary. So with something like your parsley, you just simply pull it off the stem and then put it on a drying tray, and it will dry in a couple of hours, and you'll have a beautiful color. This is the dried parsley.
Looks great.
And this is several years old.
That's beautiful. And you brought some, is this basil?
Yes, now that's different. Basil is a bit different in that basil has an internal stem. See this internal stem? Okay, that, just like this stem with the parsley, will hold on to its moisture. So what you want to do with your basil, anything that's got a thick stem in it, if you want it to dry more quickly, what you have to do is cut that so that the dry air can get inside. If you just put this leaf on and let it dry, it will take a lot longer because it's impossible to get that the
thickness
moisture
is just
out
different,
of that.
you can tell.
Yes.
So do you just do a rough chop on it then and sprinkle it on the tray?
Or you just break it when you put it on the tray, just so somehow the air can get inside to that stem.
Okay. Can you, when you're doing herbs, can you put parsley on one
You bet.
tray and basil on the
You
next?
bet.
And
Right.
I see you've got some chives here that you've done.
Same thing, just I would chop the chives. And most of the herbs will dry in about 2 to 4 hours, depending on how many trays you have on the food dehydrator. And you'll know that they're dry because you'll be able to crush them. They're crisp.
Okay.
If they're not crisp, they're probably not dry.
Probably not quite ready.
And one of the things, the important things to remember about drying anything is that when food is warm, it feels softer. So if you take it off the dehydrator and let it cool for just a couple of minutes, you'll be able to feel it, and then you'll be able to test if it's in fact dry enough. Yes.
Okay. And greens are another great thing. You have another example here, and this is
Kale. Kale is a very popular food, and kale also has a very thick internal stem.
Yes, it does.
Yes, so that would take a very long time to dry. So what we do with the kale is we simply pull it off the stalk.
You just strip it, yeah. Because you could probably just hang on to the leaves and
Absolutely,
and
just pull it right off, and we just stack that dehydrator.
It smells great.
Incredible.
Oh, that smells wonderful.
You stack the dehydrator, then dry it, and then just take the tray off and put it into a bowl, pour it into a bowl, crush it, and put it. And kale, this is a way to have pretty much instant kale year-round.
And you can use this version in your green smoothies if you want anyway, so you don't have to be storing in the refrigerator, and you can enjoy almost fresh kale year-round.
And it rehydrates so quickly, and I mean, really, it's really hard to tell that isn't fresh one.
And you store these in canning jars?
That's my favorite.
All right.
Because then I can see what's in there.
Okay, good idea. All right, so some of the other interesting things that you've done. So this is just kind of straight herb drying or greens drying, which seems familiar to people, but I loved this first example here. This is something that you'd pick up at the store.
Yes.
You would use it as
Celery
a seasoning
salt.
to flavor soups or other things that you're making. And then you have this.
And just smell that.
So this is
100% celery powder.
100%.
So you
celery
take
powder.
the celery, you cut it, you put it on the dehydrator, and then you put it in a blender and grind it up. So you're making your own spices, you're making your own flavorings. And you can do this with absolutely any food. You can make strawberry powder, onion powder, garlic powder, mushroom powder, tomato powder.
Wow. And the aroma here, if you know, I wish people could, could smell this. It's just wonderful. And another thing that you pointed out to me is this is 100% celery.
Right.
Whereas many of your seasoning ingredients kind of start with the base of salt.
Yes.
And so this is a great way, if salt is an issue for people,
Right.
to get that wonderful flavor.
Right.
Another favorite of mine that you brought today is commercial versus fresh, just another example. And this is something I love, cornbread. It's one of my favorite things. And when you opened up this jar and shared with me, this is dried corn that's been ground, and you said you just use a blender.
Yeah.
Like a home.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you get this beautiful color and,
And
texture.
taste.
You can see there's a little bit of texture in there, and the taste. You can tell that the taste is great by the smell.
Right, right.
By the
Right,
smell.
and if you would smell this, there is no...
Yeah, we did. There's not much to this.
It smells like cardboard.
Yeah, it does. It actually smells more like the plastic lid, I think, than what's inside.
Yeah.
And to show folks, this is what you start with. So you have just this dried corn that you run through the blender. And you mentioned to me a lot of times too that putting in the freezer is a way to help make it easier.
Yes, let's say you
blend.
want to make a strawberry powder, for example. There's sugar in the strawberries, and even if they're dried hard, if you put the dried strawberries in a blender, the sugar would gum up the blender. So if anything's not pulverizing or grinding as much as you'd like, then just put it in the freezer, get it really cold, and put it in the blender. And then it'll grind up into a real nice powder.
Great. Vegetables. We've done a lot of fruit. We've done herbs, fruits. Vegetables are a prime candidate for drying. This is a jar of tomatoes, right?
Yes, 20.
20 tomatoes in
20
this jar.
tomatoes, yes. So when the tomatoes come in season, you can can some, you can freeze some, but you can also dry some of the tomatoes. And to dry a tomato, all you do is simply slice it, put it on the dehydrator on this sheet that's called a mesh sheet, because nothing will stick to that,
Okay.
and won't things don't drip through from one tray to another.
Because these are going to be pretty juicy when you stick
They
them on
can
there.
be
So do you
juicy.
want to put them on one of the lower trays?
No, it doesn't matter where you
Doesn't
put them.
matter.
No.
Okay.
But there's a couple things. You want to use tomatoes that are red, not red and firm, not red and squishy.
Oh, okay. So
Be-
slightly firm.
Slightly firm, and they cut a lot better. They stay a better color.
Do you have to peel them?
No,
No.
you can if you want, but that's more work than I want to do. Those were from our garden last year. I like the Roma tomatoes a lot. They're very easy to cut.
Okay.
And you can also, when you put the tomatoes on the dehydrator, one of the things you can do is sprinkle a little basil and a little oregano
Oh, so
on
you get
top, so
seasoned.
it dries in, so it's seasoned. And you can do that with any
Great.
food.
About a 1/4 inch thick, your slices?
Yeah, I cut
That's about right.
pretty much everything
All right.
about a 1/4 of an inch thick.
Sounds good. And you've got a number of different publications. You yourself are an author.
I am.
Have shared your knowledge with folks on how to do this. So there's a lot of great information if you are interested in the details of how to do this. You also have a website, Mary. Tell us what that is.
Drystar.
Drystore.com.
Drystar.com.
All right,
Yeah.
very good. Mary, thank you so much for
thank
sharing
you.
all this information, these great samples. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And I hope you folks give drying a chance at home. Stay with us. More Garden Connections is coming up next. On Garden Connections, we'd love to see photos of your garden. Or if you have questions for our garden experts, contact us by emailing garden@ksmq.org or like us on Facebook. So Liz, you have created this wonderful space here that I believe you said your grandkids dubbed the fairy fort.
Right.
It's perfectly proportioned for little kids, maybe not so great for grown-ups.
Right, but it
this
is for children.
Wonderful space. Tell us how this came about.
Well, when we first moved here, it was an overgrown area, so we cleaned it out, and the very first path was a wood chip path, and then the pavers we have now, my grandson and I saved from a house that was being demoed. So
Okay.
instead of going to the landfill, we recycled it into the fairy fort.
Great, and I love how the paths kind of run all through the trees, and in some places you have to be really a little person.
Right.
This is great. Liz, you have some really interesting things that the kids can come across when they come through the garden. I noticed there's a little gnome over there hiding under the branches, and
bells.
bells.
And
Yeah,
fairies. There's fairies throughout. Turtles. We have a few bunnies here and there, and it's things for the grandkids to find. And some of them have helped put the things where they are.
things in
so
there.
It's all
That's great.
It's all a group effort of keeping this up and cleaning it and putting the things out.
Great discoveries that they can
Yes,
find when
it
they're
is,
coming
very
around
much so.
around the corner. You've also bordered it with some lovely daylilies, and you said you started with one. Is that right?
Well, each one of these were just one daylily, and they've evolved into this beautiful mass.
Beautiful, like
And-
4-foot border that,
right,
that
and
covers
it
the
goes
space.
all the way down. And I also have gooseneck, which is a flower that I didn't realize can take over, but it's a beautiful flower, and it grows very well anywhere. And
in those cases, we don't mind, do we?
right, and they call it gooseneck because when it blooms, the white flower looks like the head of a goose.
Okay.
So in the wind, it looks like a flock of geese.
Right.
That's pretty neat. And then I have,
nice.
you know, I have more daylilies in here and ferns. So, and, you know, you always have your other little things that pop up.
That volunteer.
Right.
Yep.
And then I also have forget-me-nots that come every year too.
Okay.
So that's really pretty in the spring when they bloom. So,
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at a little bit more of the garden.
okay.
Love these guys. Well, Liz, we followed this path all over your yard, and now it's led us to this beautiful gate. And in here you have your vegetable garden. Oh, this looks great. You've done raised beds. Now, I understand that your brother, who we are going to meet here, has done a tremendous amount in helping you redesign this space.
Yeah, when I got sick, so there was no garden in here last year, and the weeds were taller than I was, and the beds were falling apart. So there was nothing growing in here last year except weeds. So my brother, God bless him, he moved down here, and then he helped redesign, and we expanded the garden.
Well, Ed, yep, join us. We're
is-
talking about you. Let's.
Yeah. This is my brother Edward Miller, and so he helped put this all together and financed it, and so now we've got this awesome garden.
It is an awesome garden. Good work.
Thank you.
Good work. Tell us a little bit about some of the features that you enhanced in this particular garden.
Well, the size of it for one thing, and the poles were just kind of the old ones were 2x4s nailed together. They just did what they could, you know, with what they had, and this is all
brand new.
brand new. The poles are new.
And a nice fence. I understand you have deer issues here.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, we've got these new, they're supposed to be deer repellents, all natural. And for the first 2 weeks, we didn't see any deer. And now we get a straggler here and there, a couple of them, and now we just chase them away because we don't want them eating anything. So.
Yeah. And you are great at repurposing things. I love that about the garden space that you have all around your
Right.
house. You were telling me about your corner posts have been repurposed. We all remember the giant snow of last May
Right.
in 2013.
My husband was anxious to put our
Your gazebo,
my
wasn't it?
gazebo
Yep.
out, right? And so the 4 corner posts were the only thing we could save because we got the snow, and then everything caved
Everything
in and it
collapsed.
was wrecked. So we ended up salvaging these, and I thought someday I'm going to use them. Well, they worked out perfect for the 4 corner
For the 4
posts.
corners. They look very nice. Now, Ed, I understand most of what's in here you said, oh, I don't really care about, but there was one item in particular that you said we are going to grow it this summer, and it was?
It was my sweet corn that I've been wanting to plant for years, and never had the space because I was living in an apartment. Doesn't work out.
Right.
And I finally found the space for this beautiful white corn that is extremely sweet corn.
All right. And it looks like you have a good stand going, so you should have plenty to go
I've
around.
got my fingers crossed. I mean, we got the whole summer to go through with hail and all that other stuff, but I'm looking forward to it.
Great.
And I'm just loving this whole thing.
It's looking beautiful. Liz, tell us about some of the other things that you've got growing in these raised beds.
Well, we've got cabbage and broccoli and green beans and peas, and I got 2 herb gardens here, and then cauliflower, tomatoes. Oh, I'm growing heirloom tomatoes, which I
those are so
never
good.
have had
Yep.
before, so we've
Great
got
flavor
room
on
for those.
those.
So we ended up with 16 tomato plants and 24 pepper plants, things like that. So it's a community garden too, so it's not just for us, it's for the entire
You
family.
and your kids and all those grandkids
Everybody
we were
helps.
talking about?
Yep.
Yep.
Everybody helps. They all come. They take turns weeding. They help do all of the things. They've helped plant and do all of it. So I'm
Great.
blessed to have that in our lives. That we have children and grandchildren that do step up and help.
A great group effort.
Right.
Sounds good. And I noticed we were walking through the beds a little bit, and you've got some volunteer oregano too. That's
Yes.
one thing that you've learned. That some things like to come back whether you
Yes,
want them there or not.
absolutely.
They're in there with the
and
eggplant.
they do smell great. So it's all good stuff.
All good things. Great. Well, it looks terrific. We're going to look around a little bit more.
Okay.
But we are going to send you to Chef Larson. He has a recipe for Lilac Poached Chicken. Kind of an interesting recipe, but it is delicious. Let's check it out.
Cooking with edible flowers can add some zest and fun and excitement to your repertoire. Take this recipe for poached chicken, for example. I'm going to poach the chicken in a mixture of white wine, water, and lilac flowers to give it this beautiful floral sort of scent. So we'll start by bringing some water, wine, and salt to the boil. So I have 2 cups of water in the pan, a cup of dry white wine. I'm using a Pinot Grigio. And we're going to add just a half teaspoon of salt to that. Okay, we'll bring that up to a boil. Then we're going to add some lilac flowers. Now the lilac flowers we have here have come out of my garden. If you're going to be using edible flowers, make sure they come from a reputable source. They're clean and pesticide and herbicide free. Now the way to clean these is just to take the sprigs and carefully pluck just the flowers from the stems. We don't want any of that green stem in there. That can add a bit of bitterness to it. Okay, so we have half a cup of flowers there. I'm going to add those to the pan. Then we'll be ready for the chicken. Now to make this quick and easy, I've taken 2 chicken breasts, cleaned them up a little bit, and then sliced them into 1/2-inch thick cutlets. I'm also using the tenderloins too. I have those on the side. This is 20 ounces of chicken, which is enough for 4 people. Okay, so once we have our boil there, we're going to cover these and cook them for 4 minutes. You want to make sure that your pan is big enough so that you have just a single layer of chicken. And we'll start our timer. All right, so our timer's just gone off, so we're going to check our chicken, make sure that it's done. It should be firm, but of course we don't want to overcook it because that'll make for tough chicken. All right, that looks very good to me. Clean tongs. We'll remove that to a bowl. We'll try and keep most of those flowers in that poaching liquid until we're ready to strain them out. Okay, we're going to keep this warm while we finish the sauce. So to finish that, now we need to make sure that the heat is on full high here, and we're going to reduce this. Now that's reducing is chef speak for boiling, really. We're just going to crank it at a full boil and let that come down until there's about 1/2 cup of liquid left. So it's been about 4 or 5 minutes now, and this has been reducing nicely, or boiling. And it looks like we have about 1/2 cup of liquid left. So now we need to add the heavy cream. So in the cup here, I have 1.5 cups heavy cream, or heavy whipping cream. And we're going to stir that in. And we're going to let that cook until this is thickened to a nice sauce consistency. That's going to take about 4 minutes more. So it looks like we're getting to a good consistency here on the sauce. We'll check it one more time. We don't want to take it down too far. And that looks lovely. Now we're going to strain those lilac flowers out. So we have a nice clean sauce, and we're going to plate this by putting just a single portion down here with 3 of those cutlets. And I think maybe a little bit of a seasonal side to go with that. Some sauteed asparagus with green garlic and mushrooms. And then we'll finish the dish with some of that sauce. And of course, we always like to make things look pretty. So we'll grab a little sprig of lilac and put that in the corner. Dish fit for a king. Lilac poached chicken breast.
Well, Liz, you have an amazing place here. I love that you've got hidey-hole places and big open places. You've really created a great family atmosphere, and it sounds like everybody helps in the garden, and congratulations on really a year of renewal and bringing this place back to life.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for sharing it with us today.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us here on Garden Connections. I hope you enjoyed the program. We look forward to seeing you next time. I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham.